If you're like me, you've had a hard time trying to conceptualize the idea of God as three, as God as a Trinity. This is why some of the world's great faith systems, the Muslims and the Jews, have discarded this idea of a multi-person God and have stuck with the universal, singular, unified God. It was 1150 AD, and Richard of St. Victor entered an abbey just outside the walls of Paris. Richard eventually became one of the greatest authors of the Catholic tradition. Richard argued that it's necessary for God to be a Trinity based off of the actual definition of God. Now, what is that? What is the definition of God? Classically, it's been that God is the maximal being possible. He is the maximal being possible. This tells us a few different things about God. Number one, that God must exist because it's better to exist than not to exist. Secondly, God must be omniscient. He must know everything possible, not only the things that are, but the things that could be. Thirdly, it is important for God to be immutable, that He does never change. He never changes one iota, and that He was the same yesterday, today, and forever. Now, the Jews and the Muslims would agree to this. We also understand that God has to have within Himself this idea that He is the source of love. And all the great world's religions believe that God is love. The Muslims would say that one of the 99 attributes of Allah is that He is loving, that He is loving at His very core, and they would agree that He is immutable. The Jews would also assent to this idea that God is immutable and that God is love. Now, how is it possible, St. Victor argued, that God could be love and be immutable at the same time if God is a singular God? Because He would have no one to love. And if you stick around to the end, I'll explain why it's not necessary to only have two, but to have a three-person God. Richard of St. Victor said this, that if God was love, He would have had to have someone to love forever, for all of eternity. And so it would be necessary for a second God to coexist from all of eternity, that they could always be in love. Because if it took a creation for God to create in order for Him to display His love, He would not have been love before the creation. He would always have to have something to love. And if He created a creation in order to be able to effectuate His love, that would mean He is reliant on His creation for a singular attribute, the primary attribute from some perspectives, for Him to exist. And so He would be a needy God if His love was only an outpouring of His created order. Now, if God created a being from all time that coexisted with Him, this is very much like a husband and a wife, or a man and a woman meeting each other in college. If you remember those friends in college, they met each other and they instantly fell in love. They were together all the time. They were studying together, they were hanging out on weekends. And if you were a friend of those people, what you realized very soon was that they would leave you to go spend time with this person because they were in love. Now, if they were in love and they stayed in love long enough, this love grew and matured, they would basically ignore everyone else outside the world, and they would go spend every moment possible together. And this is just a natural outpouring of a human love between a man and a woman. Now, this human love would eventually turn into something a little bit distorted from what a perfect love would be. And this is the same thing that a two-person God could potentially fall into. That a two-person God would be a love from all of eternity focused on one another. It would look to us like it would be a love of infatuation, because it would be a love that's centered on the desirability and the honor and the personhood and the reality of the other, abandoning all else. And so they would have no need or no desire to share the love, to be able to have a creation. So this would leave us in a very, very tough spot. This would not be a type of God that we would want to love. And so we have at the outset two different ideas of God. Number one, a God that's singular, a God that is one, that has no other to love from all of eternity, and then becomes love Himself whenever He creates creation, providing two issues. Number one, that God is not immutable, God changes. And number two, that He needs His creation in order to reflect and to be a central attribute of Himself, which is love. Two strikes against the singular God. Now, if the singular God were to create a second God, or that He had this second God from all of eternity, which He shared His power and He shared His grace and He shared His beauty with, and it would be right for Him to love this other being, to love this other person, because that is the truth, that He would want to ascend to the highest possibility, and the only person worthy of love would be a equal, co-equal God. It's natural that a God would want to love another God if they're equal. But the problem with this is the same problem with our college friends, that it turns into mere infatuation. It is a inward, it is a selfish love. Hey guys, I really hope you're enjoying the topic so far today. If there's anything that you would like for me to talk about next, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Love to hear great ideas about videos, stories, historical encounters, philosophies, world religions that you'd like to hear about. Comment below. Let's get back to today's topic. What Richard of St. Victor said was that it became necessary to have a higher God. Because remember, in the definition of God, he is the maximal possible being. That through everything, God must be maximal in all of his attributes, of all of his divinity, and all of his immutability. And so it became necessary for God to have a third person within his Godhead from all of eternity. And it's the church mystics that would say that God is primarily a father who begets a son outside of time, before all of time. And the love between the Father and the Son are spirited into a spirit, a Holy Spirit. And the three of them participate in a dance of love. Now, why is this necessary? This is necessary from a logical standpoint. I am not talking about the mystical standpoint, but I'm talking about the logic necessary in understanding what type of God there must be in order to make it a worshipful God and an ultimate God. Because a God that's selfish, a God that changes, is not by definition God. It is a sub-God. And so it's necessary for a God who wants to be the maximal possible being to have the maximal type of love. And the maximal type of love is the same type of love that a man and a woman, after they're united in marriage, decide to have when they have a child. You see, whenever I became married and my wife became married to me, we decided to have a family. And the child was a gift. It was her gift to me to give me someone else who would love me. But it was also my gift to her to give her someone else to be loved by. Let me repeat that. Our child, this third person in our relationship, was the person which my wife gave me in order to love me. But also that it was a gift for me to give my wife to have another person to be loved by. And you see, as we love this child, the love would pass from myself and my wife through our child. I would love my child in a way that would help her to love her mother better. And my wife would love the child to help the child love her father better. And so eventually, in a properly functioning marriage, in a properly functioning three-person love within the context of a properly functioning family, you would find a love in which I'm able to love my wife through my child, and my wife is able to love me through the child, and we are both able to love the child. It's what Tozer would call the eternal dance of love. And the eternal dance of love is the highest form of love, because not only does God have to be love, but he also must be the maximum type of love. And this is why it's necessary for God to not be a singular God, to not be a God of two, but to be God of three, a God of the Trinity, because the highest form of love is the shareable love. It's a love that can be shared. And you see, as this propagates down, as this cascades down from the original Trinity into mankind, where he shares his love through common grace, through the colors that are in the sky, through the order out of the chaos, through the beauty, through the relationships, through the fractals that become us as families who have children who are able to love and share our love. And this, my friends, is what St. Victor, Richard of St. Victor, was talking about when he talked about it's necessary for God not to be a singular God, not to be a dual God, not to be an infinite God, but a God of three. Hey guys, if there's certain questions you want to ask me, hit me up over on Twitter or comment below.